one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronic.
Is that the fight of 87?
I'm not quite sure where the first part ended on. I don't quite remember, but I'll probably know where we are the moment I hear him talk about it, so it's fine.
This is after MatPat was like, goodbye, internet. Oh no, MatPat. Thank you so much for all the videos you provided us, man.
I cried. My childhood.
Right? It's been there for so long. Watching him for a very long time. Alright, let's learn about the FNAF lore.
Let's learn more.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, and officially page 7 of the FNAF timeline script. Last time I covered the origins of Freddy's. We talked about William Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing bear come to life.
It was actually a real bear.
Moment that his dream is copied by a rival restaurant franchise looking to steal away his success. The merger of the two franchises results in William meeting Henry, a brilliant designer with a knack for robotics. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish, spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving, the world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life, yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our newest channel. Guys, this is a huge moment for us theorists. For the last decade, we've had this 4-player controller icon, and now we finally fill in the final missing piece.
When did he launch? What is this?
Of our newest theorist channel. Drumroll, please.
There is fashion theory, there is food theory,
we're looking
and
at the
style
science, math, psychology, history, and mystery of the way you look, your clothing, fashion trends, hygiene, and makeup. Now, I know that theorizing about style might sound weird at first, but hear me out. I grew up not understanding style or fashion at all.
Can you pause so I can tell you? There is food theory, there is style theory, game theory, and the last one is film theory.
MatPat is running, what, 6, 7 channels on his own? Well, I mean, he has a team.
I mean, 5 channels if you include GT Live, but otherwise 4 channels.
Jesus.
And that's why there's like 4
lot.
people. That's why there's like 4 people that would take over each representing channel. Like
I see.
People of the new generation.
Admittedly, I was a bit of a hot mess, blissfully ignorant to the impact that style has over your life and how the world treats you. But over time, by educating myself on the ins and outs of the fashion industry, I was better able to achieve my true self and find my own sense of personal style. And that right there, that builds confidence. The way that you look directly affects the way that you feel and the way that other people treat you. So understanding those rules and being able to take some control over all of that is incredibly valuable. It's an educational curve. And what do we do on these channels? We like to educate you while entertaining you, which honestly is why I think this channel is so important for us to launch. There are so many lies and half-truths in the fashion industry that there needs to be someone out there to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and this is what science says. Also, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fun because talking about fashion is weird. Like, this channel has already given me the excuse to bludgeon a ballistic head to death using a high heel.
What?
It's also the channel where we're gonna physically be testing the viability of female armor, or how many t-shirts it takes to stop a bullet. There's also practical everyday stuff too on this channel. Do school uniforms actually benefit the students? Does it make a difference whether or not you wash your legs in the shower? That's the sort of stuff that you can find on this new channel.
These are some actually pretty interesting questions.
That you can check out right after you finish this beast of an upload. I personally recommend starting with the Killer Heel episode because this episode's all about the birth of a killer. And while you're over there, consider subscribing. It'll do all of us over here a huge favor, because if we manage to get a million...
just killed all of the kids with just the high heel shoe.
So that's the lore of FNAF. How compelling.
It's bringing up the ugly laugh out of me.
Subscribers by the end of the month, it'll put us as a top fashion channel here on YouTube. Show the world that looking smart can be even better than looking cool. So go ahead, enjoy your all-day theory marathon. And now with our logo complete, it's time to complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry.
The Afton era.
1983. Business was booming with two whole restaurant franchises running, Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit, and fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men, a human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were hidden throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with
This is such a bad idea. This is gonna go wrong so fast.
And then it's not that bad of an idea, but at the same time,
who
it's
thinks of that?
idea.
Oh, I just don't have time to raise my kids, so I'll have my eldest kid raise my youngest kid, and I also set up cameras all over the entire neighborhood. Yeah, that's a reasonable thing to think of as a parent.
I mean, this is like the part of the theory where like it kind of differs from the audience. Some people like the Freddy. I don't know if he's going to say it in the video, but the Freddy Fazbear, the psychic friend Fredbear, he talks to the crying child, the little baby son, the little boy over there. He talks to him quite often, and some people say that he's not actually talking to him, but it's just like his imagination. But some people say that it's Afton talking to his son. It differs.
was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump scaring him with a foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronic.
Is that the bite of 87?
I knew you were going to say that. Okay, it's not a bite of 87. If you remember the timeline, this is before the 87. Like much before.
Well, everything can be the bite of 87 if you believe, Kiwi.
Wait, so my dog almost biting off my ear was a bite of 87?
Yes. On my sources, I made it the fuck up there.
Those Max are against me.
Yes, I can.
That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements, and they'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp, but it was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital.
Oh, it was just a prank, bro. Oh, God. I bet you he filmed it and it was going to upload it to his YouTube channel, too. Stupid kid.
Yeah, but children want to be those types of YouTubers. I must call them Vtubers.
No, Kiwi. Just the fact that we're related to them as a YouTuber is bad enough. Don't make them VTuber pranksters.
Imagine VTuber pranksters.
How would you even do that?
Today I made my very well-rigged friend Jason get pranked by taking over his model and kissing a girl.
What an epic prank, bro. Wow. Yeah, I don't think that would work very well.
Hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together.
Okay, pause. I knew this was going to happen. Okay, so multiple theorists have confirmed that this was not Afton telling that to his child. It was actually his brother. Because like Matt Pat said at the beginning, Afton was too busy to parent his children. He didn't have the time to take care of his kids. And the aftermath of the pizzeria, of what happened to his son in the pizzeria, kind of made him even busier. So he could not be there in the final moments for his son. So it was his brother Michael that promised that he's going to put him back together. It was Michael. That's the important part. It's important because of the later lore that comes.
Okay. I guess we'll see.
This would not be the end. No matter what, William's son would live again. It would just take time. Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was...
That's not scary at all, and certainly not traumatizing in any way.
I find it cute.
Oh, sure you do. You find a lot of things cute, Kiwi. I wouldn't agree with most of them.
He kind of looks like a very ugly frog.
William's idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's spring lock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right outside his drive.
No. No. Why would he? No, what? That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, then what happened?
Okay, so from what you've seen already, right? It makes sense, right? William, even though he is a serial killer, to a certain extent, he really does love his children. To a certain extent. He's going to put the business over his kids, yes, but he does love his children. Just like logic-wise. Do you really think that a guy that made cameras to monitor his kids would just bury his last child that died on its birthday outside of a random lot? What? That makes absolutely no sense. There's no way to prove this, right? Because there's no dialogue mentioning where the child was buried. But just logic-wise, it makes no sense. Or even promise, if we go by the theory that he's going by, that Afton promised that he's going to put his son back together, why would he promise to do that if he's just going to bury him in a lot outside somewhere randomly? It just makes no logical sense. I'm sorry.
This little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son Michael was far worse, complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet.
I have a lot of disagree with this. Right?
Oh my god.
Okay, so this whole cutscene, from what I've seen from other people theorizing about it, right? Purple guy, in every iteration that he's been shown in the game, has always been purple. That's why he's called Purple Guy. His son has always been either red or purple as well, or just humanly colored. His wife has never been shown in any way, shape, or form. But she would probably not react the way that she did. So a lot of people think that the person that's walking by and so on, that's not the purple guy, but the father of one of the victims of Afton. So the scene that you're seeing right now is Afton just going onto a crazy killing spree rather than just him being a really bad dad.
I mean, yeah, I don't know anything. I just know what MadPat is telling me.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here to make corrections. People can also make corrections themselves, so them in the comments to refute me if they think that MadPat is right. It is just from what I've seen and from what I agree with. This theory I completely disagree with.
Digging into the wet earth, the words "it's me" ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there.
If you go back a little bit.
Into the wet earth.
Those three-toed feet, right? That is a very good example of the spring bunny suit. Not the spring bunny that's currently active, but the bunny suit that Afton had from the very beginning. At the feet, it only has 3 toes, and there are like some really good footsteps. That is why people think that this is one of his victims instead of actually being Afton's son, because there is no reason for him to break a window and run away, and for his father not to know that he also did that or where he went, because he does have nanny cameras set up all over the house, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people say that this is one of the proofs that it is actually one of his Afton's victims instead of actually being Michael. The feet are like actually also very small compared to like other feet that we see in the cutscenes, which proves that it cannot be Michael because he's a teenager at this point in the story.
Words, "it's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights, Michael would even go so far as to break out of his room to check the gravesite and ensure that his brother was still there. As for William himself, he disappeared into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think, to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant, how they'd cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there, how Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy, and now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. The robotic part was the part
everything's
that failed
Henry's
after all.
fault.
William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. The bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea, a beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the man that had humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria, William attacked Charlie in the back alley. It felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally released in a moment of pure unapologetic evil. He would make Henry hurt like he hurts.
That's a good evil
William
laugh.
became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled, but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence, and though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's Family Diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant.
One child death was not enough bad press to handle. Like, why did 2 children have to die for it to close?
Oh, sometimes, accidents happen. But 2 accidents? No. And I mean, the second one was like very clearly a murder. The first one was an accident. It was a prank gone wrong.
Anyway, all the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location, and there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of 1983 and 1984 were spent quietly grieving. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and the new cast of characters were a hit. Tragic memories of their yellow predecessors quickly faded. Afton kept a low profile and buried himself in work and research, quickly reaching Henry's level of engineering and even surpassing him. And while Henry slowed down to grieve, Afton kept going, even starting his own company, Afton Robotics.
The thing that I did say last time was just me being a little bit too ahead in thinking. He does end up becoming better at the engineering part. I'm sorry, that was my fault.
How the turns have tabled.
For all those pet projects that were a little bit too experimental for the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first of these experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983, a passcode that served.
Okay, see, this like literally just refutes the theory that he made beforehand. Like, just straight up refutes it. Why would the dad that like has nanny security cameras set up for his children be so angry at his son to basically like be an abusive father? it makes absolutely no sense. I just don't think that the yellow person is actually Afton. I think that's a completely different dad, a completely different story that just ties into the FNAF lore as a whole, because it's not the first time that the FNAF games have given us just really random backstory of a victim of Afton's, just like sporadically throughout the games without like going too deep into it. I think that he's going to mention a few of those victims as well.
Does a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place. This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him. All this for him, right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares. Nightmares far scarier than he could create with actual materials. They would appear organic, rotting, putrid, terrifying. These would be his means of keeping his son Michael in the house where he belonged. Was it extreme? Maybe. But then again, this was the boy who had killed his son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an
Okay, so I don't remember which game that was, but there is one FNAF game where you play as like a kid in his own bedroom.
Yeah, FNAF,
so that's the brother?
It was FNAF 4. Yeah, it's brother Michael. I don't know if he's going to ever show the map, but there is a specific map inside of FNAF 4 that's in the shape of a box. That's basically just all of the FNAF locations in a single map. You have FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 3, FNAF 4, and FNAF 5 without FNAF World. And so basically all of the locations are in a single room. And one of the theories was that this is like just a dream from the crying child, the little kid that died. That like FNAF 4 is just him playing through his trauma of being bitten in the head. But that was quickly debunked by Scott himself. He really hated that theory. So this theory is just basically going off of that, just Afton experimenting on his son as like a punishment for killing his brother. I use quotation marks on the punishment because like he still had the access to the outside world. He was just kind of like locked in this location under the night and tortured by his dad. This is like the moment Afton goes into insanity. Yeah, like at this point, Afton, I would believe that he would bury his son in the backyard, but the past Afton, I would not.
Father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Why do you hide inside your walls?
That's not creepy at all.
There is music in my halls.
Is he going?
All I see is an empty room. No more joy, an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused time and time again, leaving her no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Well, how's this? I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be...
I forgot the name, but the final, like, original FNAF game with original characters in it. Like, it was a scene that would play after every shift. This little show. Mike would always watch it. It actually had quite a few lore bits in it, like you saw just now.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, sure. Scott made the game, so obviously he's going to put it in there. Even if it just seems like a weird random thing. It's actually not.
Be unleashed.
Of course it's
What it
not.
felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985. Putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking.
the
At
back
first, he was
rooms.
cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. You never truly forget your first.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never
Obviously.
leave the
Put
building.
them in the
they had to be
suits.
stuffed inside of the suits. No one maintained those things anyway except for him. And so Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and
Jesus.
Gabriel would come next. But it was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just being kidnapped. Until the last one where all pretense was off. He let himself get violent. Too violent.
I'll just wait for him after school, throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far.
Okay.
That one?
So, I don't know if he's going to mention this. I don't know if this is too early. There is a theory that the crying child, his son, and the last victim, Cassidy, are actually souls that are stuck inside of the Golden Freddy. Because the Golden Freddy in the I think in the second game, if you get all of the mini games completely right and you complete them like perfectly, you get the true ending, which basically shows you the scene of a birthday party that's being thrown for the Golden Freddy, and a crying child ended up dying to Golden Freddy on his birthday. So it's basically like, oh yeah, we're going to ascend because we have fulfilled what we always wanted to do. The basic theory is that Cassidy, the final victim that has died most violently to Afton, is the soul that never ended up leaving Golden Freddy and ended up going on to be throughout the whole story. The one that actually ascended to afterlife was Crying Child in the second game. That's a theory. A game theory.
Yeah. I can't comment anything about that. I have no idea.
That one he shouldn't have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back. But they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best.
But also, if this is happening, why would you ever bring your kid here? Shouldn't this place just get shut down?
I mean, at this point, one of his kids is dead. The other one is with her mom. And the third one is basically confined at home being experimented on, on and on and on. So, there is no kids of his in the restaurant. Oh, you mean other parents?
I meant the parents of the other kids who would bring their kids here in a place where kids disappear.
I don't think it was. I actually don't know, but I don't think it was actually brought to the public that kids were disappearing until
really?
all 5
The
were
police
gone.
are investigating this. There are reports on this on the news. What?
Yeah, it always says 5 victims, 5 kids disappeared. So it took a long time for people to notice, which also again goes back to the Orange Man, an abusive dad towards his son that disappeared. Of course that type of dad would not actually pay any attention to his son. Right? And it also says in the game that he goes to his favorite place and there is little footprints. You would assume it would be the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and parents would not report him missing until all of the other 5 kids are gone because they would think that he's just refusing to come home. It's just logical sense.
I don't know.
You should watch the 8-hour
No, I don't have the time.
I'm joking. This is perfectly fine. This is why I'm here.
A free man. But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics. Toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With a plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back, and without him, that was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture. No. As long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply, call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift.
Okay, I understand how it went into this. So there is a different theory about this. I'm sorry. There are so many different ones. Basically, the theory is that the person that did the part-time jobs, I'm actually, I don't know if I'm misremembering this. This could just be me misremembering it, and Afton was actually one of the first security guards. But there is a big theory going on that the security guard throughout the whole thing has always been Mike, Afton's son, because like the the crazy Fredbear friend said, he would put him back together, which is theorized to be Mike. So Mike would sign up to work here to basically just try and find a way to communicate with his brother to tell him to move on. That's one of the theories. Just that I should mention
there
it.
It was. Buried in the back of parts and services, mixed in with the old withered animatronics, was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, I just got put foot in my mouth. Yeah, okay.
I was just let it play for a few more seconds.
Yeah, he worked as a day guard, not a night guard, and so he just like did bad shit and then got fired.
Oh yeah, it's Afton. What do you expect?
None of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good. If he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just
yeah, I know that there's another FNAF game where it's much different from a pizzeria. You go down an elevator and you have to crawl through a vent and stuff like that. Okay, I think it's a newer one too.
This one is my least favorite one because it's like FNAF, the original FNAF, and all of the original FNAF games would be really fun to watch other people play because it was just a very claustrophobic enclosed room. But Sister Location was much bigger and much more boring to watch. So all of the lore that I know comes from just watching people review the game. I have never actually watched anybody play it because I just could not enjoy it.
Murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed...
Just to mention something, the reason he wants alive kids outside of just experimentation is because the newest Five Nights at Freddy's Pizzeria that ended up closing because 5 more kids died, Afton wanted to try killing the kids and try to get them to possess the toy animatronics, but that didn't work. None of the little kids ended up possessing the toy animatronics. It did not go as planned. So he's trying to basically experiment with something called Remnant. It's mentioned a lot in the books and it's mentioned in the final game. Basically, Remnant is like some kind of soul juice thingy, and the special metal that they were using for the animatronics on the oldest version of the animatronics, like the very first ones, the furry ones, the kids' souls ended up mixing with their Android devices, the metal, and created like this Remnant thingy, where their souls are possessing the animatronics, but the animatronics' Android-like features and so on are still effective. So they're still children and have the personalities of the children, but at the same time they're animatronics. And Afton basically wanted to experiment around with that, play around with Remnant, and see what's going to happen if he puts alive children in the animatronics, if he kidnaps the children and puts them in the animatronics. What would happen if he took the children's brains and put them in, like, you know, just playing around with Android and so on.
Yeah,
that's something
just
that
normal
comes from
people
the
stuff.
Yeah, just normal people stuff. It's something that comes from the books, so I'm not sure if it's like considered by some fans like actual like lore thingy, like, oh yeah, it's canon, because some books are not canon, but some fans consider it canon, and it kind of makes sense.
It plays into the sci-fi aspect of FNAF, and I can kind of see it being a thing, simply because of, like, you know, Afton's realization.
And the fact that just they didn't possess the animatronics.
And a new breed of animatronic, their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations, Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as 2 special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again.
I've seen fan art of this character.
Ballora is really pretty. I really like Ballora too.
Is she?
I mean, for a FNAF fan, yes. Usually all of the animatronics are animals. Of course, one humanoid character is going to be extremely popular.
Second, the titular baby was designed with his baby in mind, Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed, until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny.
Oh no.
Didn't you make her just for me?
The day before...
There is like a very well done animation of this scene from Sister's Location. I will maybe show it to you after this because I really like it. It's like very pretty but disturbing at the same time. It's from Baby's perspective.
So yeah, from what I'm getting of that is that Baby did the thing that she was designed for and gobbled up his youngest.
Baby, you know how Freddy was designed to be the center of the group? Baby was designed to be a center of her group, which she had the ability to make ice cream and like produce really nice smells and sounds to attract children. And she would always count in her head how many children were in the room. And once Elizabeth approached her, she just offered her an ice cream and just scooped her up inside of her stomach.
Well, Afton, karma.
You reap what you sow.
Her Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. A scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gas leak. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement.
This is a perfect example of the remnant theory that Afton had. His sadly, right? His experiment turned out to be true. If a child dies in the most unfortunate circumstance ever inside of the animatronic, they possess the animatronic through remnant. The soul juice has juiced.
With some mad scientist shit. And as the mad scientist, I don't accept Afton. Afton does experiments that I don't like.
He had to return to where it all started. 1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but Williams' damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, and another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But he had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of goo. Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly the coils came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it! He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else, something mindless and frantic.
Maybe it's because of the combination of different souls that was just melted into one liquid. I mean, whereas Baby is one soul.
It is all of the souls of the children that he killed personally.
Violently. By luring them behind and... Yeah. Whereas, I guess for Baby, she died a horrible, horrible death, but I guess it's indirectly by the hands of her own father still, but yeah.
By mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep
This
testing
is
to truly understand
This is where the lore goes crazy, right? Because it goes from just murder 5 kids into full-on sci-fi, like mad scientist technology. This is where my love from FNAF comes from. This part. I love this. I love the fact that it's going like this.
Yeah. I mean, with how FNAF was setting up with the possessed animatronics and whatnot, it was bound to go down the sci-fi route.
Needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door, and Afton's mind reeled. The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts that he could see, all standing against him. But what could they do? What couldn't they do? He panicked as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He
and
was
that's
the one
how he gets trapped in.
The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate.
He's licking a lot of tomato juice.
He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse. animatronics. Blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in.
Yeah,
An
you
owner
should
would
do
have
that.
to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit.
Are you sure about this? I don't think so, man. We'll see how this goes.
Relieve him from this tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
Damn! Well, you kind of deserve it, William.
Yep,
You
he
really
does.
deserve this.
Just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one. Nothing is being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die. End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and reestablished time and time again by the games. That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one presumably left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically why Afton wants him scared. He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare both Mike and the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere, so he can keep tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows circus babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth...
Alright, Kiwi, what is it this time? What did old Mr. Pat get wrong?
No. It's not wrong. It's not technically wrong, right? It's just that I'm pretty sure it was confirmed in the game itself, if not world itself, that Mangle was created as like a different version of Foxy. You know how there is like the normal Foxy? The red pirate Foxy, and the reason he looks like that, even though all the animatronics look normal, is because kids kept on picking on him and breaking him apart. So basically, Mangle was created as like a toy for kids, for the kids to take apart and put together. It ended up not going that way. The workers ended up being too lazy to put Mangle back together every time the kids destroyed him. That's the only reason Mangle exists. I don't know if Funtime Foxy and Mangle are in any way, shape, or form created. I don't personally think so, because Funtime Foxy, like Mangle's head and Funtime Foxy's head are completely different. Like Funtime Foxy's head opens through the middle and the bottom, while Mangle's is complete with just the mouth that opens. Makes no sense design-wise. I don't know why Scott would not include that design if we're supposed to connect Funtime Foxy with Mangle. But like, At the end of the day, I could be wrong.
Dying First has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work, hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons from the various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming 1 starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he re-emerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close, thereby leaving us with 5 more games to cover and another 40 plus years of Fazbear history to recap. Ooh, when you put it that way, something tells me that this might balloon into 4 parts. Ugh, we'll see. Anyway, until then, my Faz heads, congratulations, you made it through a massive upload.
To be honest, I think Afton got everything that he deserved. I'm actually kind of surprised that his partner, what was his name again?
Henry.
He tried to reopen the same store again after everything that happened. Like, really, dude? Can't you just come up with a different idea now at this point?
I don't know, but I think that, like, a way that certain people explain it, I don't personally agree with it, but the way that certain people explain it is that he tried to get Afton to come to the store so he could get him arrested. But like at the same time, why didn't he when he started working as a day guard, as like the owner of the restaurant? He would probably have the overview of all of the employees.
Yeah.
So I don't technically agree with that theory, but like maybe he was just trying to.
And like, why hire him as a day guard? Like, did he use like a false name or something when he hired? And you guys didn't do a background check on him?
There is a false name listed on the paycheck card.
Well, it was kind of satisfying though, seeing him walk up and being like, "Oh, you got yourself stuck in that suit, eh? Oh, later then."
Yeah. I can't wait for you to get to the point where you can rewatch the Henry speech video that Silver and I showed you and be like, "Oh my god, that's such a cool speech."
Yeah, you were like hyping it up, and I didn't get any of it. Like, I didn't understand a single lick of it. And it is kind of messed up that Afton is just experimenting on his kid now. But I mean, his kid was also like a lot of pressure was put on him to like take care of the youngest. No, not the youngest, his little brother. But that was also a stupid prank. It's just so unfortunate. Everything just sucks because Afton is a bad father. The mother's also not kind of there.
At the end of the day, the experiments in game 4 that Michael goes through are like the clear like showing of the amount of trauma that he's going through because of what he did to his brother. Like seeing the nightmare versions of the animatronics you played tricks on for your brother is like a clear sign of like a great amount of trauma that you inflicted on yourself and on your family. It's like a literal definition of family trauma.